Well, welcome to Martini Time. This is going to be a good one, so hold on to your hats or your martinis. So, it's Guru Purnima. That is the full moon of July, which is tomorrow, the 9th. And the biggest moon of July, and it's celebrated in the Hindu tradition as the Guru's moon, because it's the biggest moon. So it's the time to celebrate the Guru, or the teacher, a spiritual teacher, or the Guru. And unfortunately, in the West, there is no category for Guru, but there is in India. And there are big gurus and little gurus, many gurus. But it's in our culture, our society, it's always fraught with problems, egoism, surrender, giving up control, and all that. But what I want to celebrate is my guru and the second marriage. So I live in Blackstone here on South Main Street, and down about 3 blocks down the road, if not that, 2 big blocks, there's a big Baptist church where I was married to my wife Tilly in 1960. I was in the Navy, a skinny sailor, and I came up here to Blackstone, and we got married and began our journey. And then I had left a traditional life that I'm sure my wife expected, and entered a spiritual journey, which was kind of like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. You know? Spiritual journeys are not straight. They go like a snake. They're a sidewinding path, and they make no sense. And so anyway, we parted ways in the 70s and got divorced, and then a year and a half later, we got remarried. And the second marriage, which is what I wanted to talk to you about, was performed by Swami Muktananda, Baba Muktananda, in his big ashram in the Catskills of South Fallsburg, New York. And I was a follower, disciple, student, whatever you want to call it, of Muktananda. And let me show you the picture. This is a picture of the wedding, and as you can see, it's an Indian wedding. My wife was dressed up. They had people there who dress you up in the Indian style, and this was me in that gold there, turmeric is for wealth, and you have rice for fertility, and flowers, big leis draped around you, and there was a group wedding of 20 people, 20 couples from 20 couples from around the world, and it was an Indian wedding in the sense that it wasn't like a Western wedding where you have the ceremony and the bride, because it was, basically it was, the main part of the wedding was, as I recall, having a lathe around the two of you and walking around circumambulating a fire 3 times, and then the guru doesn't really perform. It was a group, so he I forgot what, I gave a talk, and we all had some chocolate, and then he gave a talk, a blessing. And I remember from the talk was, the marriage is, you never take your hands apart, never separate, you see. And so this was our, I had failed, I always tell jokingly, that I failed at marriage, and then I got divorced, and then I failed at divorce, and then got remarried. And so we've been remarried ever since. But even then, there's more. So the underbelly of the story was that we were living in Cleveland and got married in South Fallsburg, and so I went to get the marriage license, and they required a blood sample in New York, and we were unable to do that. You had to go get a blood taken and a blood sample, and it was a mess. So we didn't have time, since we didn't have time to couldn't do that. So said, well, go ahead and get married, get your certificate, and then just get the marriage license later. He'll sign it, no problem. Well, I never got around to it. So I guess back in the, I forgot when it was, we just never thought, at least I did, we just never, well, we're still married, you know, this, the divorce was like a hiccup, you know, you just go on. So anyway, I'm trying to think when it was, and I can't remember when it was. It was in the 2000s, and I was up at Yogaville, and with my wife and my uncle and his girlfriend, and we were in a gift shop there, and we were standing at the gift counter, and there was a Swami sitting there, and my wife and I were standing at the desk, and the Swami was sitting there, and my wife had picked out a ring, and my uncle and his wife were tired of standing, so they were sitting in two chairs right down there in front of us, like they were watching us, and we were standing there in front of this altar, and there was the Swami in her orange robes, and so I just took the ring and I put it on her finger, and I said, "Will you marry me?" And of course she said yes, you know, but it was just a spontaneous thing. And so right after that, I planned a ruse where I set up things at the court, county clerk. And so a friend of mine and my wife were in the, I said, "Wait a minute, I got to stop at the county clerk here for something." So we go in there, and they come out, surprise! So we had so I've been married 4 times. You got the Baptist time, you got the Baba Muktananda time, you got the spiritual wedding up at Yogaville, where Swami Satchidananda built, although he had died since then, and then the court, you know. So who else has had 4 weddings to the same woman? Tell me that. I ought to put that in the Guinness Book of Records. So, but I wanted to honor ironically, you know, we got married, we had 2 kids. My daughter took that picture I just showed you. And we had a tent, we camped out at a campground near Fallsburg after the wedding. So our honeymoon was a camping. And so after that, we went back to Cleveland, and we opened up a Siddha Yoga Meditation Center. So we ran a Siddha Yoga Meditation Center for about 1.5 years, I think. And then, looking back, I don't know why, but I was called to transcend. Something I needed to go to the big ashram in Ganeshpuri. That was kind of like the city on the hill for the followers of Muktananda, to get to Ganeshpuri, you know, the original ashram in India, you know, and it's kind of like getting a PhD, you know, kind of that kind. So we sold our house, and the prices of the house had risen enough then, so we had enough money to buy a car, go to India, and I bought a VCR recorder, cost $800. They were new then, but I wanted to open up a meditation center, and if you had a meditation center, you had to be able to play tapes of the guru's talks, you know, the spiritual talks, and you know, like you see them on Facebook, you know, YouTube's all the time, but you know, the guru talk, the Dharma talk, you know. So I got it, you know, so that was, you know, $800 for a VCR. Think of that. It was a heavy thing too. So anyway, got a new car, a VCR, and we're going to Ganeshpuri. And Ganeshpuri, the ashram at Ganeshpuri, was the same ashram that the author of Eat, Pray, Love wrote about. Although she didn't mention Muktananda. His successor, when he died in 1981, was Guru Mai. And but anyway, so I go there, and we had planned to stay much longer, but my daughter got protein deficiency because she wouldn't eat the food, and got sick, so all of our money got sucked up into that. So we came back, and we came back to Virginia, and to this house, temporarily, of course. Came here temporarily to see where we would, but I felt like I was a yoga missionary. It's like I was, I had been ordained to open up a yoga mission and teach and bring the spiritual light of yoga to the world, you see. So I came to this Blackstone almost almost like a Christian goes to China to convert the heathens. You know, I was going to convert the heathens here to you. Well, they didn't want to be converted. When as soon as I came in the house, we're going to stay here. My Tilly's mother lived here. I put my Muktananda picture on the wall, and she, boy, you can't put that thing on the wall here. Where am I? So right then, that was the beginning when me and Baba went underground. Because I mean, you live in a rural area, and the mantra that is the glue to the cultural network of a rural area is, what will people think? What will people think? You know, that is your primary thought before you do or say anything. What will people think? So anyway, so I did want to honor on this Guru Purnima all my gurus. First of all, let me honor Krishnamurti. Now, he was not my physical guru in the sense that I met him. I did, however, in 1968, go to sleep listening to his talk, and when I awakened the next morning, my whole personality had dropped off, and I was in kind of like a state of samadhi or absolute equanimity for a while. And I had the person I went to sleep with the night before, this conflicted, troubled personality, was not there. I looked in the mirror, broke out laughing. Aha, I see you. Like an avatar, right? I knew who you, I see you. You know, finally you're here. I've been looking for you my whole life. Finally you're here. It's kind of like if you see your soul looking back at you and you say, oh, my beloved, you're here, you see. So anyway, that began my spiritual journey. And I knew that I had to find a guru. I had to find a master. I had to find a teacher who could guide me now that I had awakened this tiger. I had awakened the ox in the Zen stories. And I had to learn how to ride this ox because I had my ego was still, it wasn't that my ego was gone, it was just that it was blimped, blown out for a while, but it was coming back because it had not been, I had not done anything to tame it. I had not done anything to escape the tyranny of thinking, of thought, you see. And you know, it's kind of like you go to a chiropractor and you're all bent over and he goes crunch, crunch, crunch. Oh, God, I'm so free. Oh, but then you go back and your old posture comes back and, and pretty soon you're right back like that, you know, because you never did any yoga. You didn't do it, you know, your old habits came back. So my old neurosis came back, you see. But now there was a tiger in the tank. There was something inside saying, what shall I be? This is why I love that poem a bodiless child full of life cries in the gloom with a frog voice, "What shall I be? What shall I be? Something is alive in me, and I don't know what it is. What shall I be?" You see, that's what was awake. And so Krishnamurti woke that in me. And I don't know if he was sitting there somewhere in England and says, "Oh, I think I'm going to wake up Ed Conley." No. But the Dharma does it. The teaching does it. The Dharma, the teaching, can wake you up, you see. The guru has nothing to do with it. He's just a vehicle for the teaching. Okay, so who's the second one? Okay, well, the second guru was Swami Rama. So when I went to practice, after going to seminary in I think 1969, and they reviewed my application, which they had accepted, and they reviewed it and then rejected it. So they flip-flopped and threw me out. I knew that the Christian institutional church was not going to be my guru. And so when I heard about this teacher, Alice Christensen, in Cleveland, who was teaching spiritual yoga, I went zooming up there, and I've talked about this before. And I asked to be, and I said, "I want to be your teacher," and she said, "Okay." And basically, she said, do this, say this mantra on the job, do this mala for about an hour a day. Don't drink, don't smoke, don't eat meat. Do this yoga, and come back and see me in a year. And I said, "Oh, is that all fine? Oh, good. I'll see you in a year." And then she said, "You can do what you want," which I thought meant, well, you'll be a yogi then. Okay, awakened or something. Okay. So I did that. But anyway, I met Rama, who was her guru, and he would come from India and visit his people, and stop in at the ashram and perform bless malas and give talks and all that, you see. And so I met him a few times. And when I first met him, we were walking to our tea in the garden, and out of him came this hologram of my father. And it just sat there between us. Like I first saw one of these in Star Wars, like you see them all the time, a hologram of somebody, wah, 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 just there, and then it went back into him. So apparently there was, I tried to figure this, he didn't say. I said, "What does that mean?" He just, he didn't answer. You got to figure it out. Or he didn't know, I don't know. Anyway, there was a transference there, or a merging of my search for my father and the search for God, kind of like became the same thing in that. So anyway, so that was the second one. So then the third guru was, of course, Swami Muktananda. This is him younger than when he was when he married us. Muktananda was a very powerful, realized being who came to the West in the 70s and just created hotel-size ashrams wherever he stopped. Wherever he stopped and talked, people would start and gather centers, and centers would become ashrams. And so they were all over the world. So he created this city yoga, like an international yoga system that would, it's kind of like a yoga Disneyland. It could handle big crowds. They understood the science of crowds of people. Because when you start attracting stadium-sized amounts of people, you have to have logistics. You have to have organization. And Muktananda had that, you see. So it was an expanding world, you see, an expanding Siddha Yogas. But then when he died, it stopped expanding and it began to contract, you see. And then he died in 1982. And with him gone, I went into, in the 80s, was a period of real dark night of the soul. Because I had lost my center as the guru, the stabilizing center for my neurosis. I had lost that, you see, so I had to recapitulate, I had to reboot, I had to rediscover my center without Baba, you see. And so who was the third one? Well, in 2005, I went up to Yogaville, and here's Swami Satchidananda, and this is his guru, Swami Sivananda, who was in the Himalayas. And oddly enough, I mean, Sivananda and Muktananda knew each other. And Sivananda was connected with Swami Rama, which was the other guru. So there's a network, you see, of these great Indian masters, and you can start connecting dots, you know. But here's Swami Satchidananda, and I had met him in the 80s, but a friend of ours teaching my daughter drama was a disciple of Swami Satchidananda and lived at Yogaville. Yogaville is a yoga community up in between Farmville and Charlottesville on the James River, where Satchidananda built this lotus, beautiful temple in an ashram with swamis, teaching swamis, and people come there and do workshops and everything. It's a real active, powerful spiritual center. So anyway, I went up there to take my daughter because she was going through a transitional stage, and I thought she could use stabilizing and some centering. And so I took her there. And while I was there, that something that was alive in me kicked again. Thump, thump. I'm alive. What shall I be? Or, I'm back. I'm back. You thought you had left me. I'm back. So, anyway, so I began to have a desire to meditate, return to my spiritual studies. Ever since, when Baba died, and I went through this dark night of the soul, and then I became a writer for the local paper, and realized that I was going to stay here in Blackstone. It wasn't going to be temporary. There was no place on the other side of the horizon for me. This was it. So I kind of like made a vow to stay here, that if I didn't solve the dilemma here, I would just take it with me and have to solve it somewhere else. And the same way with that second marriage. The second marriage was a vow. A vow. Now a vow, a true vow, a heartfelt vow, cannot be broken. It's a vow to death. Death can't break it. That's what a vow is. And that vow, when you make that vow, and it can't be made by the mind. It can't be made by the wishy-washy mind. Well, I think I'll keep this. But I mean, yeah. That vow comes from the center. So that vow, that second marriage, was that kind of vow. And my guru said, the spiritual marriage, two hands together, never take them apart. Never take, no matter what, never take them apart. You see. So that's the, just last night I talked about the transcendent relationship. Well, the second marriage is the transcendent marriage. The first marriage, and I'm just speaking metaphorically now because not everybody's going to marry the same woman twice, but I'm saying is that the second marriage is a metaphorical marriage, a spiritual marriage, and it doesn't have to be with the same person. But the first marriage is usually when you try to put two opposites together and they just go choo, 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 choo. You know you're supposed to be one, but you can't do it because you're two objects, you're two things. You see? So it's constant conflict. Bam, 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 until finally, I quit. Or you end up in the newspaper having shot your spouse. All right. So the second marriage is this. Now that means it's transcendent. It's a transcendent relationship. Because you're still doing this, but at the same time, you never part. So the whole that you relate to is transcendent of the two hands. You see what I mean? So there's two hands, him and her and him, you see. Boom, boom, boom. Bam, 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 bam. But the marriage is this, which transcends the this. So you're constantly remembering and referring to the transcendent that as you do this. You see? So this means you grow. You grow. You allow each other to grow and to be individuals while at the same time you're in relationship. You're one but two. The problem is without that transcendent element, you're just two, and you're trying all your heart to become one, but you can't because you're two things. You're two separate forms, you see. So the release of your identity with form is the release to transcendence. And that liberates you to grow in conflict. And then conflict becomes a source of jokes. A healthy marriage is a funny marriage. A transcendent marriage is one that creates jokes. That's why I love Everyone Loves Raymond. That's a transcendent marriage because it creates jokes. Of course, it's a TV play, but it's the same. It's two trying to become one, and instead of creating bam like that, it creates jokes and love. Anyway, so my four gurus, Krishnamurti, Baba Muktananda, Satchidananda, say four? Yeah. And Rama, Swami Rama, sorry. Four, you see. All of those are transcendent relationships. Just like my marriage. A guru, your relationship with a teacher. Now that guru, that teacher, doesn't have to be a living yogi from India or a Zen master from Japan. It could be in a book. It could be in a movie. Zorba the Greek is my guru. He's been giving me wisdom ever since I saw that movie in the 60s. The Avatar is my guru. That's been giving me spiritual teaching ever since I saw it 3 times. Movies, everything, anything can be your guru that gives your heart guidance for transcendence. That's what it's all about. It's not about becoming knowledgeable, about becoming a big teacher. It's not about becoming skilled. It's not about knowing anything. It's about transcendence. And in order to transcend, there has to be a surrender, an openness, a surrender to a teaching. So when you find a teaching in books, Joseph Campbell taught me this. He's another one of my gurus. He said, you find a teacher you resonate, then you read everything he wrote, and then you read the people that he wrote. You find a teaching that resonates with your heart, that speaks to you as your voice, you see, not like, what is this guy saying, or I got to memorize it. No, you just feel it. You feel the resonance. You feel this is truth. That feeling of truth is you. You are truth. That feeling of truth is you. So when you find that teaching in a book, or even in a movie, watch the movie 20 times. But mainly, then you read everything he wrote, and then you read everything that influenced him. So you just keep going like that, you see. And you read it as if it is a lifeline and you're drowning and this is a rope somebody throws to you. You read it with that kind of interest, with that kind of compulsion. I want to take this rope because it's going to pull me out of my drowning here in this material world. I have to find a relationship to transcendence. I have to find the relationship to the second marriage. The second marriage is a transcendent marriage, and it really doesn't matter what you're in relationship with, but whatever your relationship with, it is a relationship that points you towards transcendence. It could be a great friend. It could be your cat. So somebody asked a Zen master, "Oh, well, how did you get enlightened?" He said, "I watched my cat." There has to be this awakening, yearning for transcendence. The awakening of the yearning for transcendence. And this is what, when we see somebody and fall in love and all of that romantic stuff, what is that but a yearning for transcendence? We see that beloved person, and that is transcendence. That relationship, that beloved, will take me out of my prison, will take me out of my enclosure, will take me out of my solitary confinement, will take me out of my my little box, you see. Transcendence. We watched a movie last night about, and I can't even think of its name, but it was really great. It was a German movie, so that a friend of ours was hard of hearing, so it didn't have to get subtitles. It already had subtitles. But it was all about, the romantic comedies romantic movies are all about transcendence. All of it. In fact, most movies are about transcendence. One way or the other. They're breaking out of something and finding a resolution. But the relationship to transition has no resolution. You never arrive and say, "Aha, I've arrived." There is no arriving. There is always transcendence. There is always growth. In life is growth. So there's always life, you see. There's always transcendence. That's what life is. Life is transcendent. Life transcends itself. So when you get in alignment with life, you get in alignment with transcendence. And in Zen, it's called Dharma. You get in alignment with Dharma. And so when I got hooked up with these great gurus, these great masters, in the Rama and Muktananda, I was getting hooked up in a relationship with a fire, with a funeral pyre. You get hooked up with a spiritual teacher, you're getting in relationship to a funeral pyre. Your ego, your resistance, your rigidity, all that you cling to is going to get burned up. It's going to get burned up, you see. That's what a funeral pyre is. So you get in relationship with the truth. There has to be a willingness to get burned up. You have to throw all that you cling to in it. You have to throw all your beliefs, all your opinions, all that you cling to, all that you hold dear, all that you cling to keep you from drowning. Throw it into the fire. Throw it into the fire. And that's the yearning for transcendence. You have to throw what you cling to into the fire. And that's what a true marriage is. You throw in the fire. The marriage is a fire that will burn up your ego. The marriage is a spiritual fire, a funeral pyre that will burn up your sense of separateness and your clinging to your individuality and your control, you see. And you don't surrender it to the other person. That's the big block. You see, well, I don't want to just surrender to my wife and just, or she doesn't want to surrender to me. I don't want to be controlled by him. So there's a reaction to that, you see. But even that has to go into the fire. Everything. There's not a single speck of dust that that the fire will not demand. The fire of marriage will demand every single piece of your attachment to form, because the transcendent that you're surrendering to has no form. The transcendent is formless, you see. It's you and your spouse and your partner that has form, that's fighting each other. So the one or the other will be the transcendent one. Well, that's a pathway to divorce. You can't be transcendent. You can't be the one by subduing the other. You have to throw your desire to be the one into the transcendent relationship. And you could say that's with God. I don't care. Doesn't matter what you call it. You got to throw that into the fire too. All the names. I'm telling you. The fire of transcendent will eat everything, every thought, every belief, every religion, every philosophy, every theory. The whole catastrophe. It'll eat it up. But what's left is the fire of life and passion and creativity, the fire of joy, which is continuous transcendence, continuous life. And in religion they call it life everlasting. Or in Buddhism, the nirvana, deathless. You see, it's blown out. The ego is blown out. And that just means that you don't cling to it. It's still there, you just don't make it a big deal. You give it up, you see? So, what else can I say here? I've been talking about Guru Purnima and the big zero in the sky, the biggest zero of the year. Oh, one more thing. What the heck? So the moon in mythology, with the goddess, the mother goddess, Gaia, mother goddess, she has a son. Mother goddess Earth has a son, and it's the moon. And the moon is the dying and resurrected son of the mother. Put it in Christian terms, you got Jesus is the dying and resurrected son of Mary. So when Jesus dies and goes to the tomb, 3 days, then rises, that's the moon. Going to its night, 3 days, then the new moon rises. You see? So in the ancient mythologies, they looked up at the moon and they connected the moon with the dying and resurrected son of the mother, you see. And so, this full moon, the guru, the teacher represents that connection with your own dying and resurrection. So this dying and resurrection does not happen like that in time. I got to die here and I get resurrected here, or I got to die here and I'll get resurrected when I die and go to heaven. All that in time, you see. So when Jesus said, if the seed falls upon the ground and does not die, it stands alone, in exile from the garden. But if it dies, it bears fruit. So we look at that in time, like a real garden. Oh, if I throw the seed down here, then in the spring it'll come up. No, that's in time. In transcendence, it happens at the same time. They're together. You don't separate it in time. You don't separate it, dying, seed dies here, rebirth here. No, it's the same thing. So the funeral pyre of transcendence is death and life at the same time. They're not separated. You throw yourself into the fire and you are reborn in that same act. The act of dying is the act of living. The act of dying, the act of giving is the act of receiving. The act of dying of letting go is the act of being born. Not separated, you see. It's one. But we live in a world of time. We live in a world of thought. We live in a world of Western materialism. It's all stretched out like a spaghetti or like a taffy string, you see. It's all stretched out like that. It's all stretched out like that. There is no vertical now in which it's all one at the same time, you see. At now, it's all one. But we stretch it out. And we walk the beam. We walk the plank, you see. So this whole idea of transcendent, the transcendent relationship, which I've been metaphorically calling the second marriage, is created by a vow that says, and that's what Buddhism is all about, the Buddha legend. He tried all the yogas, all the teachings, all the dharmas. All of them were limited. All of them didn't work out. He did them all. And then he said, I make a vow. I'm going to sit under this tree until I penetrate the secret of life, until I penetrate this enigma, until I penetrate this mystery and see what the cause of suffering is. I want to see why we suffer. I want to know why there is old age, sickness, and death. So he sat under the tree, took a vow. I won't get up here unless I die. I don't care. That's the kind of vow, you know. And the vow to meditate, the desire to meditate, is the vow of the Buddha. I'm going to meditate here for 20 minutes a day, and I don't care what the mind does. I don't care if the mind says, go do this, do that, this is stupid, this doesn't mean anything, why are you doing this is stupid. What will people think? What would people think if they knew you were doing this? You see? So you don't, you just sit. And that connects you with the transcendent marriage, the transcendent relationship. And you begin to grow. You begin to transcend yourself. You begin to see what you didn't see before. You become creative. And you become joyous. And you have laughter in your life. So thank you so much for dropping in and sharing with me, letting me share with you the many moons, the many gurus I've had. And I hope that you find a teaching in your life that will connect you to transcendence. So you don't leave your prison, you transcend it. So, thank you.